Hello everyone. Welcome to the 12th Canadian Science Policy Conference, CSPC 2020. As part of our virtual interview series today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Dugan O'Neil. Dr. O'Neil is the Vice President of Research and International at Simon Fraser University. Dr. O'Neil, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Yes. So first off, I'll start by saying congratulations on being appointed as the Vice President of Research and International. You definitely picked the best year to begin your term. So we'll start. 2020 has been an unprecedented year for the entire scientific community at large. And academic institutions have also been affected by recent happenings in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm curious to know, how was SFU able to quickly adapt to support their research activities despite the recent happenings?
Well, you're certainly right that it's an unprecedented year. I've been at SFU for 17 years, and we haven't seen anything like this before. It's been an unprecedented year for our community, and our number one priority from the beginning of the pandemic has been to keep that community safe. And so the first part of the pandemic was about shutting things down. It was about moving people away from on-campus activities, including on-campus research, to do things remotely, online. Of course, we had some exceptions from the beginning for COVID-related or other urgent reasons to be on campus. If someone was trying to build a COVID test, they didn't have to leave. What we did since then is gradually open things up. So we had to work with university safety and risk offices, with other post-secondary institutions in BC, with the province, across all faculties, across all disciplines within SFU, in order to bring back on-campus research. And so the state we're at now is we've brought back, starting in about July, we've been able to bring back researchers who really need to be on campus in order to do their research. As long as they have an approved safety plan in place. And so it has changed. Even the researchers who are fully back on campus now, they have active research programs. It is still a different environment than it was pre-COVID. And I can't say enough about how flexible people have been, how understanding they've been, and that's researchers in the lab being flexible and understanding, administration at the university staff, provincial and federal governments, everybody has stepped up, and the community has benefited from that kind of we're all in it together attitude that we've heard so much about during the pandemic. I should say, though, that there are still a number of different types of research that are hard to do right now, and for which researchers are struggling. And an example is anyone's research that requires human participants. And so some of that research has resumed, but some of it has not. Any kind of research where it's absolutely required that you do international travel to a field site to collect data, for example, international travel is very difficult right now. And so it's not over the sort of interventions that we have to do to help people adapt, even though we've spent months and months trying to make it easier to do research during the pandemic. And then I should probably mention the pivot that we've seen. So we've seen a number of researchers who have changed the focus of their research, and they've changed it either by necessity because it was difficult to do the kind of research they needed to do during the pandemic, or out of opportunity, where they saw that they could contribute to the fight against COVID-19, for example. And so we've had this big shift for both of those types of reasons of what kinds of research people are doing within the university. And then it's our job in the Vice President Research and International Office to help support those pivots. And so for us, the last 6 months have probably been the busiest our office has ever been in supporting researchers change the things that they do. And there's no one size fits all solution. The problem that's preventing someone from making a very useful pivot in one department or one discipline is not the same problem that's inhibiting people in another discipline. And so it's been challenging, but it's also, I'd say, been rewarding because of this sense of community, of people working together to change things.
Yes, thank you. It's really impressive to hear how SFU has been able to, the researchers there have been able to be flexible despite, the many challenges that we've seen in recent months in light of COVID, and still staying on that line because SFU has long been known as a university that promotes research excellence and also enjoys partnerships around the globe. So in light of COVID now, with all having to adapt to your research activities, given recent happenings, how do you think academic institutions can better position themselves right now to drive innovation for socioeconomic development in Canada?
Yes, well, I think this pandemic has not only been a health crisis, it's been an economic crisis. And it's been an economic crisis that has exposed some weaknesses in our socioeconomic infrastructure in the country. And so universities have a bunch of different roles to play. Part of it is, it's people in universities, and others as well, but a large fraction of our community that are pointing out that it's not been an equitable recession, and coming up with policy advice on how to make the recovery an inclusive recovery. So the role that universities traditionally play is of course to create a whole bunch of talented, educated young people to get them out through the system and into the workforce. And we're still there as that source of talent. Probably there's been more discussion of innovation in education around retraining for displaced workers, for whole sectors of the economy that may have been permanently disrupted by the pandemic. So that is certainly a hot topic on the education side. On the research side, of course, we're a source of expertise, and that starts with the pandemic itself. How do we cope with the ongoing crisis? And so we have researchers that have been spending a lot of their time advising public health officials in various different ways. And it could be about how to reopen the school system safely. It could be about disease testing, better ways to make larger quantity or cheaper personal protective equipment, all kinds of different technologies where we could help out, and also different policies where we could help out. So another thing that universities do besides talent and the sort of research expertise side of things is mobilize the knowledge, and that's something that it wouldn't be particularly useful to fight the pandemic if we did all of these things and then kept them inside of our labs and didn't either make them accessible as something like policy advice or educational material, or make them accessible in the form of new inventions or patents or machines that can help. So all of those things are ways that we can contribute. And then I would say that the other thing I would comment on is that we don't do it alone. So any of those things we do in partnership with community, and there's no way to fully address really complex challenges like that without collaboration. And it's collaboration with other universities, the communities we live in, with governments at all levels, and with policymakers. And so the university is part of a bigger system, and we try to do our part well.
Amazing. So talent, research, knowledge mobilization, and community partnerships are all key elements that academic institutions can focus on. Thank you. So one of your responsibilities as Vice President of Research and International is to provide strategic direction for international research activities at SFU. So what role do you see international collaboration and research partnerships playing in advancing academic research activities?
Well, you're right. SFU is a very international place. We have more than 300 international partnerships right now in more than 128 countries. The challenges that we face are including the pandemic that we're just talking about, but not just the pandemic, are global and they're complex, and they don't respect national borders. And so we just talked also about the partnerships that we need to make a difference. If we want to go out and change the world, what partnerships do we need? We need local partnerships, we need national partnerships, and we need international partnerships. So an example would be sustainability, climate change. That's not the pandemic. It's another worldwide issue, not respecting any borders whatsoever. How we operate our campus is one of the ways that we think about impacting sustainability and climate change. That's very local. We have very local responsibility to do that well and in a sustainable way. At CSPC, one of our researchers, Mark Jacquard, will be giving a presentation called The Citizen's Guide to Climate Success to a national audience. So we have to do our local bit, we have to engage in a national conversation and try to shape the policies there as well. And just in September, Ionomer Innovations is a company that was founded by SFU researchers, and they won the top product and market award at the European Fuel Cell Conference in Stuttgart, Germany. So there are still some international trips going on and some international knowledge mobilization. And there's an example where chemists at SFU create something, spin off a company. That company is then directly involved in creating a new technology that lowers greenhouse gas emissions or can eliminate them from transportation if you use hydrogen fuel cells in that transportation. So there's all those different levels at which we have to work on a complex problem like that. And we were recently recognized for carrying on all those different levels in close alignment with our strategic vision. The Times Higher Education Sustainable Development Goals impact rankings came out in the last year, and we were ranked #1 in the world for sustainable cities and communities, and #4 in peace and justice and strong institutions, #7 in supporting local and aquatic ecosystems, and #9 in climate action. Number 19 in the world overall out of more than 800 institutions. And so that, I think, is reflective of that multi-pronged, multi-level approach when we think about sustainability. It's at all levels in all different areas of what we do.
Definitely. It's really exciting to hear the amazing work that is being done. So in recent years, we have seen the role of science and evidence-based decision in policy making. And more recently now with COVID-19, we've seen the impact of science and evidence-based decision in navigating Canada through the COVID-19 pandemic. I know you've also touched on this briefly recently, talking about some of your researchers lending their voice to policy making and advising some health experts. But we've also seen the impact of misinformation getting into the hands of the public now. How do you think that the trust in the scientific community and also effective science communication to the public has evolved in light of recent events? And what impact do you think that this will have on academic research activities?
Well, personally, I think that in Canada, at least, by and large, the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic has been a wonderful demonstration of science communication, and trust in the scientific community. So we've seen in many places and many occasions politicians stepping aside and giving the stage to their public health officers, who in turn are turning to their own staff, but also the scientific community for advice on public policy, which is then implemented very, very quickly. Fast turnaround science. Mm-hmm. And what I've been struck by is the numbers and the graphs, and the expression flattening the curve is just part of everyone's life now, and these are all visual representations of mathematical models of where we are and where we're going to go, projected into the future. I've never seen so many mathematicians on TV, like for sure. So as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the really great things, the really great aspects of the response to the pandemic, is that kind of communication and trust. And from SFU, we're really lucky. We have some researchers in various different parts giving advice to government, including the mathematical modeling. And our Canada 150 chair in mathematics for evolution, infection, and public health is Carolyn Collane, and she'll be on a panel at CSPC talking about what's the next curve. Using those kinds of models to give government good advice in recovery and decision making. You also mentioned misinformation. That's been a big focus of conversation at SFU for quite a while. Last year, we had our annual community summit in 2019. The title was Confronting the Disinformation Age. And so it was weeks of conversation in the community about disinformation. We have a communication school, which does a lot of research and publications on disinformation and misinformation. And during this pandemic, we've had our Faculty of Health Science, some of the researchers there, coming out and giving the public advice about how to avoid misinformation or how to find trusted news sources, so that people aren't, pursuing snake oil solutions to pandemic.
Thank you. So my final question now, we're with an entirely virtual conference this year. This is going to be a brand new experience for many and an opportunity to reach a wider audience than ever. So what are you most excited about and looking forward to in the conference this year?
So I should say I've been to CSPC in person many times, and it's a wonderful conference to visit in person. I am going to miss the interactions in the halls and things like this. But one thing that we've seen with all of these virtual activities in the last few months is that it's actually opened up participation from people who couldn't necessarily get there in person, but are going to be participating because it's virtual. So I've looked through the program. I think that it's full of very interesting panels. And so I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting to see some things that in a normal CSPC year we just wouldn't get to see, because some of those experts wouldn't have been able to travel to the conference venue and participate in that discussion. And SFU has a few panels, of course, I'm going to be watching very, very closely and listening to. And I've mentioned a couple of them in the course of this interview. One I haven't is the pre-conference plenary series is also full of very interesting things.
Yeah.
And so we have one that we're helping to organize, How is Canada Poised to Lead in the New Agri-Tech Era, that I'm planning to tune into. So I think that there's a tremendous program, and hopefully it leads to a different kind of rich experience at CSPC to be virtual this year.
Amazing. So Dr. O'Neil, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really exciting to talk to you and learn more about the amazing work that's being done at SFU. Yeah.
Thank you.